I am going to give you a crash course on how YouTube retention works and get you to the same level of knowledge, if not more, than your average creator who probably thinks they know a lot more than they actually do. This has come from someone who has built an entire SaaS tool based on retention and who has also worked with the biggest creators on the platform, hundreds of millions of long form views. This isn't scripted, going to try and keep it as short and sweet as possible, but everything is centered around these 9 points. Everything that you'll learn after this, every retention graph you look at, every kind of nitpicky thing that you can improve about a video will stem from these 9 pillars. And I'll go through them. You can kind of see the numbers here in terms of how important I think they are. But starting at end goal, pretty self-explanatory, and you can see in the notes below, an end goal is your backbone. It's your North Star. It's the reason and the heart of your video, the reason why viewers watch until the end, the driving force, essentially. Without it, your video has no point. There's no mission, there's no question to answer, there's no challenge to overcome, there's no thing to unlock or thing to reach. It's just a very flimsy, floppy video that has no backbone, and you're basically relying on the audience finding your video entertaining on a second-to-second or minute-to-minute basis. If you think about old kind of Let's Play content or funny moments content back in the gaming days, they never had any end goal. They were just kind of, if you found it funny, you kept watching. And as soon as you stopped finding it funny, you clicked off. And that's what happens if you have a video with no end goal. An end goal can be, as you can see here, it can be answering a question, completing a challenge, overcoming something, reaching somewhere, so a location. It's like the absolute bare minimum. If you're going to have 2 story beats in your entire video, you have the hook and you have an end goal. And if you don't have that, then you have no video. The next thing is checkpoints. Now, you've got your end goal, but how do you get there? YouTube viewers are very simple creatures. They essentially, in a lot of cases, obviously depending on the niche, they want to have their hand held. They do not want any confusion. They don't want to be at a stage where they don't know what's coming up next, or they're not sure how you're going to progress to the next point, which is why we need these checkpoints. You may have seen it in the form of a map graphic or a series of checkpoints or a checklist, but essentially, yeah, maps a clear path from the start of the video to the end goal. How are we reaching the thing? How are we reaching that end goal? How are we answering that question? How are we reaching that location, etc.? Easy to understand, the backbone of the video, and ensure that there are no tangents. So if you have checkpoints in the end goal, you don't want to be going off to some random location and looking for some random item that actually has no benefit to completing that challenge. Everything that you do in the video should be centric around hitting that next checkpoint or making progress towards that end goal. If you start going away from that, then viewers will naturally kind of disengage. You're not working towards something. They don't really know why you're doing what you're doing, and they will click off. Tangents are one of the biggest killers of retention. So it keeps the video very clearly progressing. You can always say, this is what we're moving towards. This is why we're doing what we're doing at any given time. So that can be reaching an item or unlocking an item or unlocking something. It could be solving a mystery. It could be hitting a level. If you are stealing from 5 banks in a GTA video, each of those banks is a checkpoint. Or even if you wanted to break it down even further, you could have checkpoints of preparing for each of those banks. So, for example, you need to collect explosives, you need a getaway car, you need a map of the bank, you need a strategy to get into the vault. Those are 4 different checkpoints that hit that main payoff or hit that main story point. Next, number 3 is stakes. One of my favorite things. So what happens if you fail? What reason do you have for trying to succeed? Can you create fear? This is obviously, you can use this to create tension, fear, mystery. And examples of that could be give something away or post something physical or something embarrassing. Obviously, there's a bunch of different examples and it will depend on your specific scenario or niche. But essentially, we've got our end goal, we've got our checkpoints. What happens if we fail? What happens if we don't reach that goal or don't get that item or don't answer that question? If there's no real reason why that end goal is kind of something that you're striving towards, and there's something that's giving you that extra motivation, and there's that additional layer of motivation, that additional layer of risk, or that additional layer of being able to create tension, then you have a much weaker video. But then if you add the fact that if you fail, you have to do some kind of forfeit or thing that you don't want to do, you now create fear in your viewer. You now create, especially in niches with younger audiences, if you say that you have to give away every single item that you have on your account, little Timmy will think that's the worst thing in the world, and they will continue watching until the end of the video to make sure that you don't have to do that. And they will feel the fear that you feel because they can put themselves in your shoes. It sounds silly, but believe me, it works. And then that ties in perfectly with time constraints. Now, these two things are equally as important. If you have one and not the other, then they're nowhere near as powerful. But if you have both, then you're onto a really good piece of content. So what clock are you racing against? And obviously, if you are trying to beat a boss in Elden Ring and you're trying hundreds and hundreds and thousands of times, eventually you will probably succeed. Anything in life, if you keep trying, you will succeed. But what makes it more of a mystery, what makes it more impressive, and what makes it more of a challenge to tackle is if you add some kind of time constraint on top of that. So instead of infinitely trying, is there some kind of constraint that you're trying to beat? So that makes every failure, every roadblock, every unplanned issue have more impact. And it obviously works in tandem with the stakes, because not only every time you fail to kill a boss, the time is getting lower and lower and the chances of failing get higher and higher, but it also increases the chances that you have to do this stake that we already know is another layer of why our audience has fear. We're creating tension, we're creating suspense. They both work together. Is really, really a really powerful concoction. Even with more mature audiences. So if I'm a Mr. Beast video or even like a Matt Beam video and I'm trying to make a giant statue of Mr. Beast for a Mr. Beast video, we have stakes in the form of we're going to disappoint Mr. Beast. He's not going to have the statue ready for his video. All hell breaks loose. And also the time constraint, if I have 24 hours to do so, I'm now racing against that clock. If something breaks on a statue, that's now a big deal. If some kind of substance that I need to coat the structure in keeps melting and now the whole thing is going to fall apart, that now feels a lot bigger because you've now got something to race against and you've got stakes that you're trying to obviously beat. It can be 24 hours, 7 days, a month, 12 hours. Those are probably the common ones that you've seen. Realistically, it can be 60 seconds or it can be 5 years. Ultimately, another way that you can use this is having time constraints per section. If you are spending 24 hours in a certain game and you have an end goal, you may have 10 checkpoints on your way to that end goal. And each of those checkpoints may have stakes and they may also have time constraints. And you kind of see where I'm going with this, that you can have all of these 9 things for the entire video, but you can also have them per section. And if you have 10 of those sections in a single video, you now have 10 sections that are probably more optimized than your favorite YouTube creator. And that's how you start to get those really, 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 really flat retention graphs. Moving on to the next one. Number 5, progression. If you make content at the same level the entire time, so for example, I'm playing Roblox and I have 10 checkpoints or 10 items that I want to unlock, but each of those 10 items or those 10 brain rots are the exact same rarity, the exact same difficulty to get, it's going to become very boring, very repetitive, and very easy to predict. But if we start off with the least expensive and we finish with the most expensive, or we start with the easiest to get and we end with the hardest to get, then we now make sure that our video is essentially trending upwards instead of in a straight line. So if you imagine this is all of the brain rots being the same rarity, we now have this where you start with 1 and you end with 10, obviously being the most expensive and this being the least expensive. You kind of get where I'm going with this. It can be applicable to any niche, any type of content. It could be golf, it could be gaming. Obviously, gaming kind of lends itself to this because naturally, in most games, you're going to be progressing upwards. The items are going to be harder to get, the levels are going to be harder to get, whatever. But you can also create this within golf, for example. Just pulling an idea out of my ass. Golf trick shots. We start with the easiest one where you chip a ball into a bucket from 50 meters away and you end by trying to get a hole in one or on a 400-yard par 4 or something like that. You can kind of see how there's progression from the easiest challenge to the end, and this ensures that the audience always has a reason to continue watching. It's not just one level. It's always going to deliver on the title or the packaging of your video to an increasing level, whether that's more impressive, entertaining, interesting, challenging. And if the video remains the same the entire time, it becomes repetitive, boring, predictable, Every challenge gets harder, every boss gets harder, every unlock gets stronger, every item gets more expensive. Moving on, number 6, payoffs. Dopamine, something satisfying, impressive, answers a question, closes a loop. Now, we want to essentially, if we have a 10-minute video, then we want to be putting these little payoffs throughout the entire video. It basically ensures that we're drip feeding the audience some level of dopamine. We're impressing them, we're answering a question, we're giving them something that they want in correlation with whatever they clicked on. So if I'm promising something where I'm testing 10 cheap TikTok gadgets, then those TikTok gadgets should essentially, whenever I reveal them, should act as a payoff. Or when I figure out if they work or not and they end up working, that's a payoff because it's delivering on whatever they clicked for. Now, if I just had this is the whole video and then I had one here and one here, this is a big gap with no payoffs, no dopamine, and no reason for the audience to feel like they're being delivered something valuable or why they're being delivered something interesting. Now, this doesn't just apply to gaming content or entertainment content. This could also be finance content. If I imagine, I don't know, an Alex Hormozy video, and this is the full timeline, and he gives me an interesting piece of information here and an interesting piece of information here, I've got a big fat, probably 15 minutes of getting absolutely no value, no interest, no nothing. But if I now spread them out, so now they're getting 5 pieces of value and they're evenly distributed throughout the content, I now ensure that my audience is going to remain captivated. We're going to continue to drip feed them dopamine or value or entertainment. And I can ensure that they're not going to click off because they get bored and I didn't deliver them anything for 15 minutes. Now, if we get a little bit more, a tiny little bit more advanced with this, you can also consider that your audience is going to want more value or more entertainment when they first click on a video. So if I imagine I have 5 payoffs and I want to distribute them through this 20-minute video, I might think that my audience is going to have less patience at the start of the video, so I'm going to put the payoffs with more density. And then I'm going to put these payoffs with a little bit more of a gap between, because if they've already got to this part in the video, the likelihood of them having more of a, or more patience towards the back end of that video when they've already made it halfway through and they want to see the end of the story, or they want to see if you succeed, or you've already given them 3 super valuable pieces of information, they're less likely to click off. So I can spread out these payoffs and potentially make the video a little bit longer, get a higher RPM, better AVD, potentially rank higher against my competitors without risking the fact that they're going to click off because I've got a gap too big. We've delivered them lots of value here, and now we have some slightly longer gaps as well. Easy as that. Moving on to 7, foreshadowing. Kind of very self-explanatory, but also a very powerful technique, especially in niches like gaming. Essentially what you do is you open loops and create reasons in the mind of the viewer of why they should keep watching. If I've got again, I'll use the same example, a 10-minute video, all the usual average creator is doing is they're teasing or they're talking about the one that comes next. They're not talking about the one that comes at the end. And that's one of the big reasons why you end up with retention graphs that look like this, because they're focused here, but they don't know what comes here. And if they were focused on what comes here, then you end up with a graph that is far flatter because you've promised them something that's going to interest them up here that they may not have known about if you didn't mention it. So a few examples of that. Let me get rid of my ugly lines. A few examples of that. Just wait until I reach X. That was nothing compared to X. That was just one of X. The X coming later is X. So Alex Hormozy, if you thought that tip was useful, you should wait until the one that made this SaaS owner $1 million in a month that I reveal later, for example. The viewer may not know what's coming, even with clear checkpoints, especially if they're not familiar with the niche or the game, for example. So if I've never watched Elden Ring before, I've seen a 2-hour-long video, I want something to fall asleep to, and I have no idea how the game works, I need to be foreshadowing. I need to be talking about how the game is going to progress. I need to be talking about how the bosses get more impressive or harder or more challenging. If I don't do that, then the audience is going to have no idea what to expect, and they're probably going to find something in a niche that they're more familiar with. Whereas if I had that foreshadowing and I just talked about what was going to come up later in the video, I'm more likely to keep them. Number 8, establishing checkpoint. Now, there are some really, really strong creators who do this very, very well. Essentially what this is, and I can actually use an example as I have one here. So this video, I stranded 100 people in the wilderness for $250,000 by Mr. Beast, none other than. You can see here that we have what is called an establishing checkpoint. And now this graphic and this breakdown is done by Reti, which is my SaaS tool that helps users basically learn all of this stuff that I've talked about in a very easy way to understand. But as you can see, establishing checkpoint, night 1, blue build shelter, red uses gear comfortably. Essentially what an establishing checkpoint is establishing context, what to expect, and it's also instant dopamine and delivery. So now that I have this establishing checkpoint, I know what to expect for the rest of the video. I know what the cycle looks like. I know what it's kind of going to feel like when I'm unlocking a certain item or reaching a certain destination. I know what to expect. It works in combination with your hook to reassure viewers that you're going to deliver as expected. Obviously, if they have to wait until 3 minutes to kind of see that first payoff, to see that first thing that's going to give them dopamine or value, or it's going to impress them or give them interest, they may be much more likely to click off. And that's why you end up with retention graphs that go super down and then they flatten out once you start giving that value. If I give value at the start instead, it's going to flatten out because I gave them the first value here and they're now reassured that the rest of the video is also going to be entertaining. And if I don't have that, then we end up like this. Works in combination with your hook. That can be reaching a first checkpoint. It could be showcasing a first item. It could be showing a first location, introducing the first storyline, or if I'm Alex Hormozy, once again, giving the first piece of value, showing the first business idea, whatever that is. Number 9, and the final one, is roadblocks. Now, you may have heard this called quite a few things. On Reti specifically, we call it a problem brainstorm resolution cycle, and that's how we refer to them. But essentially, you can see it in any good video. You have these roadblocks where blue team infighting over food control erupts. I read that like a moron. But essentially what that means is something working towards a checkpoint or a payoff that is something that we didn't expect. It's something that throws a spanner in the works. It's something that keeps the viewers guessing and it makes the payoffs more satisfying. If I am trying to unlock or beat a boss in Elden Ring and I do it in one smack and it's over like that, even though I was building it up for the last 5 minutes saying how challenging it is and how impressive it's going to be, and then it's really easy, that is very underwhelming, very boring, very unsatisfying. However, if I go to the boss that I think is easy and then it ends up being a lot harder and I need a certain item to beat it that I didn't know that I needed, that is now a roadblock. That is now a problem brainstorm resolution cycle where I have to think out loud to the viewers, how do I fix this issue? How do I overcome it? And then that makes killing that boss about 100 times more satisfying than if I just walked up to it and one-shot it. If you succeed every time, it gets boring and predictable. By breaking up patterns, by introducing issues the audience can solve with you, it makes it more engaging. The boss may have been harder than you thought. Something may take longer than expected. An item could be more expensive. Not enough time to X. The structure that we're building for Mr. Beast video could keep falling apart for a reason that we didn't expect, and we have to fix it, and we don't have time, and we need to go to 5 different places to find the right thing. Now, if I show you this being used on real videos, this is a Fern video, sometimes considered the best documentary channel on YouTube, and this is a timeline that Reti extracted. As you can see, we have payoffs throughout the entire video. We have non-progressive content, so that's context and boring stuff in gray, sometimes very needed because we need context for the rest of the video. We have progressive content in blue, so that's when the video is moving towards one of those checkpoints or payoffs. We can see a hook, we can see an end goal, and we can see roadblocks as well as payoffs and establishing checkpoints in purple. If we now move on to a map beam video, hook, establishing checkpoint once again, we have the payoff in the first minute, and then we have progressive content up until a roadblock. We also have a time constraint introduced here. I'm not sure what it is. I found out what it is. 24 hours is almost up. So this video in particular is racing against a time constraint. So this, if you looked at this title and thumbnail, you may not know instantly how they incorporated the time constraint, but believe me, on any single video in the world, it's probably possible to do it in some kind of time constraint. If I'm a finance channel and I'm trying to explain something really, really hard and I can't do it in under 15 minutes, I have to pull my trousers down live on YouTube. That is now a much more interesting video than the average finance video. But again, Mr. Beast, hook, establishing checkpoints, and then payoffs throughout, roadblocks throughout, other checkpoints, time constraints, etc. And then a Ryan Trahan video, same kind of thing. We got a hook, we got a time constraint, we got establishing checkpoint, we've got payoffs throughout the entire thing. We've also got foreshadowing in the light blue. you can kind of see how this ends up making for really good videos, and you can kind of see how the biggest creators in the world use this strategy. Hopefully that was useful. 20 minutes of rambling, probably the best thing you'll listen to today. Have a great one.